Hello, my name is Dr. Laurie Williams, and I am excited to welcome you to my session today titled Gaming the Classroom, Keeping Students Engaged and on their toes through meaningful activities, pacing, and rehearsal strategies. Now, I know a lot of us use games in our classroom setting every day, but it can be really challenging on the fly, particularly to come up with games that you can play with your students that will engage them and keep them actively busy in the rehearsal procedure. It can also be difficult when you are working with a lot of students who may have learning disabilities, or they may just not even be as engaged in the subject as you would like them to be. I mean, not all of our orchestra students come in with a deep burning desire to learn to play the instrument. It's up to us to help motivate them and keep them excited about what we're teaching. So today, the goal is to give you some different games that you can play with your students and just throw out a lot of ideas. If you take away even one new idea today, then that's going to make me super happy. But there are tons of things packed into this session, so I'm going to go ahead and just get right into it. So I know that one of the biggest struggles we all face with our youngest students is getting them to learn their note names. This can be so frustrating. Well, I think that if we turn it into a game of sorts for the kids, that makes it a lot more exciting for them, and it pushes them and challenges them in a way that just reading lines out of the book is not going to do. So the first thing I like to do with students, and we do this before they've even learned how to uncase their instruments, is I teach them the names of their lines and spaces, and we just rote teach those. I put it up on the staff on the board, but the goal is to get them to remember EGBDF, FACE, if you're reading treble clef lines. So what I do is I have the students in a round robin. They go around the room and they have to say the names of their lines and then their spaces. And we do this however many times, I should say, that they actually get around the room is how many minutes I let them have to pack up at the end of class. Now, if you have a particularly large group of students, you might go through this and say double the amount of time. So if you get around the room once, you get 2 minutes to pack up. Eventually, that will become such a non-challenge for them, and you'll have to move on to something else. But I really enjoy doing this and making the kids sit in different seats around the room, because if you always put your violins together, then all they have to do is copy off the person before them and then just know when it's time to shift over to alto clef and when it's time to shift to bass clef. If you mix them up around the room, they may not be standing next to anybody who plays the same clef sign that they do. We do a draw the note team raise, and this is really exactly what it sounds like. So if you don't have enough whiteboard space with staffs on it at the front of the room, I suggest you get some butcher paper, and I tape those up around the room. And that's probably even better given COVID, that if you want to keep your kids socially distanced, this works better. But what it is I put them in relay teams, and each student gets a note and they have to go up and draw the note. Depending on how many teams there are, I may not give the next student their next note until it's their turn to go up, or I may just go ahead and give them all their note in advance and have them stand in line. Now, the goal is they should have words spelled out in note names on the board when they're done. To get the point and to win for their team, they have to come up and they have to correctly say what all of the words on their particular puzzle said. I love doing creative warm-ups with my students. I believe in warming up with kids from day, as soon as they've learned how to pizzicato, as soon as they know how to use the bow, we're warming up. We're doing open strings a lot to work on bow motion. So I create my own warm-ups. And on your handout, there is a link to my personal website, and there are some included warm-ups for you that you do not have to go and reinvent the wheel. They're right there for you. I also like to do my warm-ups using YouTube backing tracks, because it gives them other music to listen to while they're playing, and it really kind of makes them feel like they're jamming out and all they're doing is playing open strings. But you can use those with scales, with all kinds of things to get them fun with warm-ups. Floor staff beanbag toss. I know that we normally think about this for elementary kids, but this is a lot of fun in teams. If you do it in like relays and whatever, You can do this with middle school kids, and they think it's a blast too. You just put the tapes out on the floor for a staff. I don't put a clef sign down, and that way I can use the same staff for everybody. And they have to toss the bean bag. I like the circular bean bags that are not real huge. And then when they throw the bean bag on the floor, they have to tell you what note it is. And yes, I put ledger lines above and below so that if the beanbag goes a little further, they've got a ledger line that they can hit. Then we also have the Skittles game here. Now I've given you the link. It's right there on the screen, but it's also on the handout. This is a great little game, and there's all kinds of different cards that you pull up, and it'll tell you notes to play or how many Skittles to take away. It's a lot of fun, and it just gives you one more idea of a game that you can play for note reading. All right, rhythmic accuracy is often the next kind of big challenge that we tackle with our students. It comes along with those beginner kiddos too, particularly when we start introducing them to eighth notes. So I like to play this game with my students called Orchestra Ninja. And I use either rhythmb.com, and that, if you have a subscription to it, it's fantastic. If you don't, it's $175 for a single subscription, unless your school district happens to have purchased it. The Winning Rhythms book, however, are a much cheaper and easier way to get your students just a solid book of nothing but rhythms for them to use for this game. But anyway, while we are reading our rhythms in orchestra, what I have the kids do is we all do it together. And then whoever is left standing, that means I make them drop out if they make a mistake on their counting. Whoever's left standing at the end of our rhythm reading session, those are our orchestra ninjas. Then the next day we come into class, and those orchestra ninjas, they don't have to clap and count. They are actually helping me walk around and watch the room, and they tap people when they see them who are out, when they've made a rhythmic mistake. And so that's a really fun game that I like to play with the kids. I do a lot of rhythm counting with drum beats apps. I gave you a link on the handout. That is fantastic. It is so much fun. But just putting on some drum beats, you could have an actual musical selection behind it that's a backing track, but I think it works really well to just put on a drum beats app. Those are easy to find on YouTube, and there are many, many to choose from. Sight Reading Factory, I'm sure that we're all familiar with this by now. Sight Reading Factory is a wonderful website. You just tell it the note range that you want for the students and the rhythms that you want included, and it will generate your sight reading for you. If you don't know about the rhythmtrainer.com, I'm here to tell you I absolutely love this website. So it has different modes, and you can set it for different ability levels, and the students can easily go in and practice this for themselves. You get a rhythm bank, and it shows you the rhythms to use, and then you can set the tempo for fast or slow. And it will help you, and it will even show you the correct rhythm if you miscount. Love the Rhythm Trainer. And then the last three kind of go together. I do this in about a week-long session. If it's a really fast class, I'll get it done in about 3 days. But what it is I teach my students rhythms using either pizzas or cookie cakes. And we do the rhythm tree on the board first, and then we show it on the cake, and then we put the beat in our feet. And I also have the students create a rhythm and do some improv with it. And right here on this slide is a picture of what we do. And I'm going to minimize my picture here for just a minute so you can read this. So first, you have the rhythm tree, and if you can see, it's on here. It's on the whiteboard that I've got up here, and these little clings are from Music in Motion. I absolutely love that store. They have a ton of different kinds of music note clings that you can choose from, and if you teach AP theory, they've got chord building clings that you can put up on the whiteboard, and they've got flats, sharps, just major, minor, everything you could think of that you might want to use for music theory. So I highly recommend Music in Motion for their music cleans. They're also food safe, like food grade, so they're safe and you're not going to get sick, and there's nothing sticky about them, and yet they adhere to the board. It's fascinating. So after we go through the note tree down to 16th notes, then I show the students the cookie cake or the pizza. And this one has, if you can see, it's already been cut into the 16 slices here. And then we equate everything we're doing. So the cake itself is a whole note before it's cut, and then you cut it in half, you have half notes, and so on. And we relate everything back to the board. Now, I will usually take one day to tie in how all of the cookie cake slices works out in fractions. Your math teacher will absolutely love you, and there's your cross-curricular teaching. So that's step 2 is the rhythm cake. Step 3, we count it and clap it and march it. So the point of this is to put the beat in the feet and to put the clapping, the rhythms up in your hands. So what I have the students do is I will demonstrate first what a measure looks like. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and everybody will clap it with me. And we will actually discuss, why don't you stomp out with your feet, 2 and 3, and why do you just keep this going? And so we discuss what the beat is versus the rhythm. And then we actually put it in a conga line. Now, the fun part about this is I will ask, after I demonstrate, I will ask each student to make up their own measure of rhythms in 4/4 time. Just give me 4 beats of rhythms. And then we will all copy 1, 2 te, 3 te, 4 te, and we will go around to the next person and the next person. We will usually, as a group, we'll do the first person's rhythm 3 to 4 times before I move on and have the next student to give me a rhythm. If your kids are really quick, you can move from student to student and not even stop. And then we put it in the conga line. When you do it in the conga line, they have to be able to really improv quick on their feet and come up with their measure of rhythms. It's also a great way to work improvisation into your lessons. All right, now let's talk about posture and position helpers. There are lots of different things that we can do with our students. One of them that I do, I call it the balance the penny game. It's you use a straw, and I recommend the McDonald's straws. This is actually from Brahms. This is a really great straw because it's kind of hard. But I have them put their bow hold on the straw. And for me, I'm a violist, so I've got my viola bow hold on there. And then you turn it up this way and you balance a penny on it. And then they do their up like a rocket and down like the rain, balancing that penny. The key is this gets their wrist moving in the right ways for them to keep the penny straight. Delrods and bow tubes. This is a Bob Gillespie thing that I absolutely love and use this with all of my students who are beginning. And I will put students who are not doing well with their bows back on dowel rods and bow tubes. They don't like that very much at all. But basically, you take a dowel rod and you put it in your bow tube. And the bow tube becomes your straight bow path. What's really fun is you can also use a rubber band. Now, I have a red rubber band here. I got this from Office Max. It's not like a regular rubber band. These are much bigger, but this works really well. And towards the end of this presentation, I will show you a picture of what it looks like to put this actually on the strings. I like to do flip the bow. So literally flip the bow backwards. For kids who are having a hard time with their bow hold because they don't have the muscle strength in their right hand to handle it, if you let the weight of the instrument, the instrument itself handle the weight of the bow, on the heavy end, on the frog, then you can have them put their bow hold on the light end down towards the tip. I also use binder clips on bows, and I'm talking about like the big ones like this that you get from the office supply store. And I put these binder clips on their bows, and I have a picture on the next slide that will show you exactly how I use these. But if you have a student who refuses to not use the rest of their bow, they're only staying like up in the upper part of the bow, you can put this bow clip on, and then they can't use the upper part of their bow. They have to use the bottom part. Bow clips are fantastic for that. And no, it doesn't hurt the strings. And then there's a lot of right hand flexibility exercises that we can do with our students. I've given you a link on the page on your handout to Michael Allen's website, stringtechnique.com, and it's in chapter 5 of his book, The Art of String Teaching. There's a link, a whole set of YouTube videos that go along with that chapter, but one video is specifically about bow hold and moving the bow and right hand flexibility. All right, so hit the target and bullseye is another one for bow motion, bow path. So this one is to get students to actually hit the target with the end of the bow or the tip, and I'll show it more on the next slide. Yo-yos, I have become a big fan of teaching my students how to do colle bowing or how to get some wrist flexibility by using yo-yos. This is a yo-yo ball, and I love this thing that you can buy 5 to a pack on Amazon. These are great because they will always come up. A lot of yo-yos, kids can't pull the thing back up again. This one comes back to you automatically, but you still get that same wrist motion. So I would recommend, though, if you're going to do this one, take your kids into like the gymnasium or spread them way apart in the orchestra room so that they're not hitting each other. These will break if they're banging them on things. And then egg carton bow paths, I've got a picture of that on the next slide. Bow buddies. I like to partner my kids up a lot. We do a lot of partner work because I'm only one person and I cannot get to every single person in the room every single day. So we do a lot of partner checks where I will have, and I try to partner a really strong student, maybe with one that is struggling, but they check each other, whether they're checking wrist or elbow or shoulder motion or bow path, whatever it is that we're working on and focusing on, they are to focus on each other and watching one another. Balance the squishy ball. Now on the screen, you see the squishy balls that I've got on there. Something like that works really well, but this is for violins and violas to keep their instrument up parallel and not be sagging. If you use a regular like bouncy ball, they just roll right off the strings. You'll never keep them on there. But if you use something that's a little more tactile, it will actually stay, and you put it between the bottom two strings. So for viola, between G and C, for violin, between D and G. Rubber band partners, you take that same rubber band. I use these same, I try to multi-purpose things as much as I can, but I use this same rubber band and we put it around the wrist. This one's big, so I'll put it around twice. But if the student's wrist is collapsing, their partner can come behind him and just gently tug. Now, the nice thing about these is even if you pull it out, it doesn't really hurt. These are not real poppy rubber bands. I did that on purpose. You can do this for cello and bass as well, but I like to have it up around the fleshier part of their forearm so that when their elbow is sagging, somebody can come along and pull the rubber band and pull their arm up. Coke can hands, guys, when you pick up a can of anything or a jar or a bottle, your thumb naturally will make its way directly across from your second finger. Those Coke can hands, and yes, I actually bring in Cokes for my classroom. You have to get special permission, I know, from your administrators, but I promise it has a really good pedagogical purpose. They take those Coke cans and they hold them. And then what we do is we slide the Coke can out of their hand, and I simply have them turn their right hand this direction so that they can keep that same open C shape when they're putting their bow hold on the bow. Same thing with their left hand position and putting their hand over onto the cello or the bass. Now, bass is a little more complicated because of the spacing between first and second finger. But for cello players, this is just perfect. And you just slide the can out and then have them put their hand right over and maintain that shape. And again, we do partner vibrato and shifting exercises. And then I love doing the posture detective and orchestra criminals. Okay, so when my students come in the room, I will pick 3 to 4 of the students and I will give them each something about their posture that they're going to do wrong on purpose. So they're either going to have a collapsed wrist, or they're going to have a collapsed elbow, or they're going to be slouching in their chair, something. I will give them something to do wrong. And then I will choose a detective in the room. And yes, I have the little hat and the magnifying glass and everything. And I will have them put it on. And it is their job to go around the room and figure out who is purposely doing the wrong posture. This works great when you have that student who's always got some sort of posture issue, for getting them to be thinking, oh my gosh, if I mess up now, they're going to think I'm one of the criminals and I wasn't one of the chosen criminals. Picture perfect is exactly what it sounds like. Y'all, we all have these wonderful things called iPhones and Galaxy phones in our hands all the time. We have a camera with us. So put it to good use. Take a picture of the perfect bow hold. I don't need the kid's face in it. I just am taking a picture of the bow hold. And the only person I'm sharing it back with is the student. I just send it back to the student. It is so empowering for some of our kiddos who really struggle with hand position, whatever they're having a problem with. If you can take a picture of them doing it right, take a really short video of them playing something right, and then send it to them to practice with at home, because that's proof positive that they can do it right. And then tension prevention police is exactly what it sounds like too. If you have students that are, all of us get tension somewhere in our body. I will usually pick 3 or 4 students and have them go around the room, and they are my prevention police. And you really want to be cutesy with it. You can get them a badge and everything and have them write tickets. But what it is when they see a student whose shoulders are shrugged up, they just tap that person on the shoulder to let them know they need to relax. Whatever they touch, and it has to be a very light touch, they have to relax. The wrist, the elbow, whatever. I know we really can't do that now, but with having people touch, but you could use a straw. If you feel me tap you on the shoulder with a straw, you could do it a different way. All right, here is a picture of the penny balance game. And I got to have a great conversation with my beginning bass player there about why that bass bow hold wasn't going to work for him and why that straw was tilting. Here's the hit the target. And so what I did is you can use different kinds of targets. You can do a paper target, and then you can use sidewalk chalk on the turning screw and on the tip of the bow to do this. But instead, what I did was I used Play-Doh. This is just Play-Doh that I have wrapped over the top of the stand so it will stay in place. And then every time you hit the Play-Doh, your bow makes a little dent in the Play-Doh, whether you're going up bow or down bow. Now, I would focus on one end before I focused on both. I just happened to take a picture of my son doing both for you and told him I actually threatened to do this with him because he's very bad with the movement of the upper arm when he shouldn't be. This is a picture of egg carton bow path, which is a nice practice for getting that bow to stay straight. And you can see he's really focused right there on his bow hold. And this is the vibrato, the polish the strings. She just has a Kleenex up on the strings, and she's just polishing the strings with the palm of her hand up against the bout of the instrument. And she's just polishing the strings there. She has a partner with her. You just can't see them in that picture. This is my binder clip bow minimizer. So you can see the binder clips. She's got 2 on this bow here. And you can see that the clip ends are down and they are not harming the hair. This is a picture of your Coke can hands. And then this is a different way to use egg shaker vibrato trainers. Okay, a lot of us think about using them like this for violins and violas. You can also use them for cello players, have them come down, and she should have been down all the way. She didn't do this one correctly. I usually have them come all the way down to the bout of the instrument, hold the egg over the strings, and then they practice that turning the doorknob motion with the egg. And that egg is actually too big for her hand too. She needed a smaller one. So I would recommend getting your eggs in different sizes and tape them shut. I use multicolored electrical tape to shut mine, and I put in rice or beans. Just a word to the wise, beans are louder. So if you want a softer sound, put in rice, but tape them shut so you're not going to have rice or beans all over your orchestra room floor. And then rubber band partners. This is that picture of what I was showing you with the rubber band partners. All right, now we all have to do our scales. We all have to take our medicine and do our arpeggios and thirds. How do we make that fun and exciting for our students? Well, I love to do this with either the YouTube tracks. Again, you can just look up backing tracks, or my absolute favorite thing to do in the world is I love the Scale Tracks app. You can tell the Scale Tracks app what key signature you want to be in, major or minor. If you want to be in a mode, you can tell it how many octaves you would like to play the scale and how fast you want to play it. So it will also scroll the scale across the screen of your device while the scale is playing. These are fully harmonized accompaniments to scales. It's genius. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's available on iPhone and iPad, and you can just plug in your phone. You could even just show it up on the screen. If you are bored at all with doing karate belt systems, or you feel like there might be too many karate belts in the system and nobody ever gets all the way through them, I would recommend trying the Jedi Academy. This is a great way to really connect with kids in popular culture. There are several levels and they're all listed on your handout. The first one is Initiate, then you have Padawan, then you have Jedi, and then I believe it's Jedi Knight, then Jedi Master, and finally there's the Grand Master. And to earn the title of Grand Master, you have to play as well as or better than I do on those same scales. So good luck to you on that one. Then Go Speed Racer, we actually call it Go Speed Racer. And basically it's velocity exercises. It's playing those same scales and arpeggios, but putting speed behind it. And the great thing is, because you can set your scale tracks app to a different tempo, you could even speed that up and still have something for the students to play along with. You can try doing your scales backwards. A lot of people don't think about start from the top note and come down and then go back up. If you really want to find out if your students know their scales or not, flip it upside down. Add in a bowing challenge. Add in a rhythm challenge. Don't do the same old scale every single day. That would bore anybody. I mean, it's boring you, be honest, when you're standing there at the front of the room listening to it. It bores you too. If you're bored, you can promise the students are bored. So do something to make it a little more challenging for them. All right, so now oral skills. There's a lot of ways that we can work oral skills into our day-to-day teaching. I know it seems like that impossible thing that we just don't ever have enough time for, but I promise there are lots of ways to work in oral skills. First, just begin with those kiddos right from the very beginning with open strings. I just play open strings with my beginners and I have them match my string. At first, I will stand up in front of them so they can kind of sort of guess what string I'm on, but get based on the angle of my bow. But eventually, once they're really good at matching strings, I stand back behind them when I'm doing it. Then have them match teacher notes. So I play pitches, and I usually will only start with just 1 or 2 pitches that I'll add, like D, E, and then D, E, and F sharp, and just build on those pitches slowly, but you play notes and then you have them match your notes. And I have a video, I have got it on the handout as well. It's a link to a video of me teaching a string project class where I do some of these very same things. And then practice slipping and sliding. Students need to be able to slip below the note and slide back up to it, and go above the note and slide back down to it, so that they actually get into the habit of hearing what's too low and what's too high. I think sometimes we just expect them to understand too high and too low and out of tune without really spending the time to train them what that is. And Sith versus Jedi, this is still building on the same idea as before, but you have a whole orchestra in front of you, and you can divide them in half to where half of the students are the Sith and half are the Jedi. And it's a competition between them, and they have to match teacher notes, and you give them each a passage and they have to match the teacher notes as a group. And that's their little competition, whoever wins, you know. And I, just as a word of to the wise, I always have some sort of prize for my students. It can get really expensive to do lots of prizes. So you'd be amazed how hard kids will work for just a sticker. So I will give them stickers, and then after a student has earned so many stickers, then they can earn a prize from me. And it'll be like, I don't know, I try to get businesses to donate gift cards and things like that so that I can do some prizes for the kids. And then I just have a gift basket too, full of prizes that they can draw from. Sith versus Jedi, though, also could work section to section. It could also work student to student. That there's a lot of different ways that you could do that and have them matching pitches. I had a couple of friends who even had kids stand back to back and actually discovered 2 students that way who had perfect pitch. Go figure. And then sing that song. I have my students sing everything that we play, just almost everything. If we're naming notes, they're singing them. Now, I don't call it singing because orchestra kids, a lot of times I've found that if you say sing to them, they will not do it. But if you say audiate, so we'll audiate songs all the time. If I'm singing D, E, F sharp, D, then we're singing that together. They have to sing the pitches on the right pitches. All right, name that tune. Oh my gosh, they have a TV show that's coming back out in January that's Name That Tune. But basically what I do in the classroom with this is I will teach them a song completely by rote, but I'll teach them 4 notes. And then I'll teach them the next 4 notes, and I'll see how long it takes before somebody in the room can name the song. And then I love doing student-led rote learning as well. Once you have done this with them a lot and they know what your rote procedure is, it should be fairly simple for a student to come in and bring their own song. And I welcome them to bring in whatever they want to bring. They can bring in a pop song, they can bring in whatever they're interested in, and then I will let them lead it and teach it. It has to be approved by me, of course, first before they teach it. And that way I get the opportunity to help them out if they should need it while they're in the teaching process. When you're tuning your students, have your students sing the string. Have them audiate what string they're playing. So I'd have them sing A, and then they play their A after they've sung it. Then while they're playing A, have them sing the D, then move to the D. While they're playing D, after they're in tune on D, have them sing the G, have them sing the C and E, and so on. I think you'll find that your students' ability to audiate those strings and know in tune and out of tune will improve dramatically once they begin to sing it. I do sweet and sour pitches with my kids. So sweet is in tune, obviously sour is out. And this is really obvious when you're plucking, because you'll get either a really thuddy, plunky sound if it's out of tune, or it'll ring when it's in tune. And we talk about what those sounds are like. And we do it as well on the bow. And we practice, okay, play. Now I want you to just move that third finger slightly out of tune, and let's hear what that sounds like. Oh, that's really dreadful, right? Now I'll slide it back into tune. Intonation elimination. I use this thumbs up thing 2 different ways. The first one is it in tune? Thumbs up. Is it out of tune? Thumbs down. Am I just not sure? Thumbs sideways. If I just don't know whether it's in tune or not. Then once we've decided, okay, it's out of tune. All right. Is it sharp? Thumbs up. Is it flat? Thumbs down. Or is it, I have no clue what direction it is? Thumb sideways. What a great way to non-verbally get your students to tell you where they're at in their aural skills abilities. And then I like penny pitches too. This requires a big bag of pennies. And right now, unfortunately, we're on a shortage of pennies. So I'm sorry for that. You could use fake pennies though, and that would work really well. But basically I give the students 5 pennies a piece. And if they, you know, when we're tuning open strings, we start with open strings. For every time, each of your strings that's in tune, you get a penny given to you by me. For every string that's out of tune and you don't make the smiley face on your tonal energy app, you owe me a penny. Then after they're really good with tuning their open strings, now you move it to playing actual passages and playing pitches in tune. It's landing on that D sharp in tune every time, and you check them, and then they have to pay you if they're out of tune. They don't like giving money away. And then chord building. I can't stress how important it is to just take the time to stop and build chords with your students and talk to them about what the third should sound like and how it should balance with the tonic and with the fifth and even with the seventh when you have a 7 chord. Oh, and I skipped past it. Name that genre, name that band. This is just a fun game, and I do this with my own students at home all the time, or my children, my own children, but I do it with my students. I will put my iPhone on shuffle, and I have a very eclectic sense of music. I love just about everything, and so there's no telling what will pop up on my iPhone at any given time. So just make sure that the language is all good and on your playlist when you do this. But when my students come in the room, I will hit pause on my phone, and whatever song it was playing, I have to go, all right, name that genre. Is it classical? Is it rock? Is it jazz? And then name that decade if it's from the last, you know, I don't know. I've gone back to the 1930s, but name that decade and name that band if you can. All right, making drill and repetition fun can be super difficult. So here's a few more ways to do that. Play or dare is so much fun. So it literally is what it sounds like. As a teacher, you have some preset selected portions of the music for each section. And you turn your cello section and you say, okay, play or dare. And they're like, okay, well, what's the play? And you tell them the play is, you're going to play measure 100 to 108 and Dvorak Symphony number 8, movement 4. I don't even know what that is for the cello part there, but let's just say that's what it is. And the cello section, as a group, they have to decide, and they have to nominate a leader too, who's going to turn in the final decision. But they decide amongst themselves, okay, are we going to play this? Do we all feel like we can play this and we can play it off well? If they play and they play it well, then they earn the point. If they don't play it well, then they lose a point. If they don't want to play it, they have the option of taking a dare. And I use the actual Jenga pieces and write on each one, you have to play a 2-octave C major scale or 2-octave C minor scale, and they have to do the dare. The dare does not have to be musical, by the way. You could make the dare something non-musical, that they tell you something interesting about themselves. So that's a fun way to do play or dare. You can also do it with just like a small group of students. That's a really fun game to do in groups, like if you want to put everybody up in chamber groups to play that sort of game. Play to the bouncing ball. This is so good for large orchestras because the people in the back play to what they hear. They don't play to what they see. Well, the best way to point that out is have them play to the bouncing ball. And when it hits your hand, that's the ictus, and that's when they should actually hit the note. And there's nothing better for showing your brass players on the back row of a full orchestra that they're playing to what they hear and not what they see than doing this game. I have my students clap or make some other sound on specified beats. This is super helpful to just see if they can even follow where they are within a measure. I think we forget sometimes how difficult it is for students to just track their way through a measure. That is a great exercise to do, particularly when you're talking about pieces and parts that are all over the ensemble. If they can clap it separately, that's very, very helpful. Student conductor, man, get your kids up there. Teach everybody in the room how to do the basic pattern that is happening for that music, and then put them on the podium and let them see what it's like to not be watched for a change. Actually, it's really interesting because the students will start to pay attention to the podium more just because somebody else is up there. I love doing Where's Waldo, and I do this at least once in every concert season with any group that I'm working with. Let's say I'm conducting in 4. In my left hand, as I'm conducting, I will pick up different things while I'm conducting and moving along. And then after I finished a passage, I will ask my students, okay, I held up 5 things while I was conducting. Who can name all 5 things that they saw? And I try to make them as random as possible. My car keys, a pair of sunglasses, just whatever might be around me, I will pick up 5 things and then I'll say, what did I pick up? Did you see what I picked up? If you did, you were watching me. If you didn't, your head was buried in your music. All right, Friday night at the Improv. This is a day where we just put on a backing track to jazz or blues or something that I've found that's fun and entertaining on YouTube. And then I have my students in a particular key signature. I will give them the notes that they can play around with. And then we just practice improvising with that backing track going. And they're, you know, the sky's the limit. They can do whatever they want to do with that. And then this home practice party, this is an idea that one of my former students had, and he does this with his students. And it just started as a way to get them to practice their contest music. The idea was you go home every single night and you practice. You take a video of yourself that is between 3 to 5 minutes long and you upload it to Google Classroom. And you have to do it every single night. And every student who does it for 30 days, every night, will get a pizza party at the end of those 30 days. Well, you had so many kids going after 30 days, they expanded it to 60 days and then 90 days and then 6 months. Guys, at a year, he still had 2 students going. So he gave them, I don't remember what his big prize was, but man, he gave them a really big prize for being the only 2 to stick with it for a solid year. But what a great way to encourage kids to be working on music every night. All right, these are some quick and easy rehearsal games that you can just pull out on the fly. They require purchasing nothing. Setup, almost nothing. Pass the measure. You know, starting in your cellos and basses, play measure 1, violas are measure 2, second violins are measure 3, first violins are measure 4, and then go around 5, 6, 7, 8, and they just rotate around those measures. If your students are really advanced and can handle passing things off like that really well, have them pass the beat. Y'all, that's hard. How about switch a seat or section swap? So I like to switch up seats. My kids come in the room and they have to find their name tag and go sit where it is because it's in a completely random spot in the room. I switch sections where I will take the bass section and put them where the first violins are, for example, put the first violins where the violas sit. I just move everybody up in the room. I think it's important for students to hear what the ensemble sounds like around the room. And then it's important for them to also hear how their part fits in with everybody else's and not become not tunnel visioned, but tunnel hearing. Face and play. They have their stand partner that they sit beside all the time, but how cool is it to actually turn your chair around backwards and face each other? So rows 1 and 2 face, rows 3 and 4 face, and you have the students face each other and actually play. Play a part. This one's not so much fun right now because we've been playing apart because of COVID. We've all been socially distanced, so nobody's been sitting close to us. But normally that would be, I would take my students out into, say, the auditorium, and I would spread us out all over the auditorium, and we would try to play our music and yet stay together. I like to put my students in quartets and quintets to play through the music that we're working on. So they're doing the same orchestra music that we would be playing as a group, but now they're playing it in quartets and quintets. If your students are not to the level where they can play violin 1, 2, viola, cello, bass in a quintet, then put 2 first violins and 3 second violins together. You know what your students' ability levels are, so you can group them in ways that will be most beneficial for you. And then unison challenge. Take whatever difficult thing that your first violins are struggling with and give it to everyone in the room. Write it out for every single person in the room, and we're all going to learn this really nasty line from this Tchaikovsky symphony, and we're going to solidarity with our first violins, and we're going to play it with them. And then I don't know if any of you guys know the 2-set Ling Ling challenge. I bet a bunch of you do, but it's basically, they do really goofy stuff while they're actually playing their instruments. So for example, putting your bow up underneath your left leg to keep playing your music, just crazy things. I would recommend looking them up on YouTube and borrowing some of their ideas. All right. Team building games. These are so cool, and most of them are pretty self-explanatory. The ones that aren't, the trade the t-shirt relay, the hole in mini, the blind partner minefield, I have instructions for how to play those games on the handout towards the end. I think it's great to give our kids an opportunity to do some team building exercises. They're not getting to connect with each other in nearly enough right now. And we all know that because we're not getting to connect enough with them. So anything we can do to give our students the opportunity to connect is a huge bonus. And it's going to be so important that we have these games ready to go and we are ready to play them with our kids when we finally get to be face to face and like have normal rehearsals again. And then indoor games. On this list, my favorite is to do a community service project together. Whether you're collecting shoes for the homeless, or as one of my friends does with his orchestra, they collect donations and toys, monetary donations, clothing donations, and toys for children for Christmas time for a charity in my hometown. I think it is such a great way for students to bond over a good cause. And then I have also the instructions for how to do the team jigsaw race at the end. That might sound kind of boring, but everybody's on the jigsaw puzzle thing right now because of COVID. And the cool thing is while they're working the puzzle, what they don't know is that each team with their puzzle has one piece on their table that belongs to another puzzle, thus showing them that even though we're in these smaller teams, we are all one big team. And then there is a link in the handout for every single one of the teaching gadgets that you see on this page and every one that is listed. I'm not going to go through and talk about each and every single one of these, but you can go to the website and you can see all of the things that they're used for. I've particularly become a big fan of this little mouse here. So I'm going to show you some of those gadgets on the previous page in action. First, we have the bow tube and Delrod. So I was trying to explain before, but I think you can see it here, how the rubber band loops around one end of the tube, and you put it over the end, you cross it, you loop it over the end again, and then you run the rubber band under the strings, and you do the same thing on the other side to secure the bow tube on top of the strings. And then you slide your dowel rod in, and it's a beautiful bowing practice. And I don't let my kids have their real bows until they can bow on those with the right bow path. I've included the dimensions for how I do my bow tubes and my dowel rods. They're just PVC pipe that have been cut. All right, this is the bow hold buddies. I love the bow hold buddies. I think this bow, fish, and frog were about the smartest thing that ever came out on the market. They really do the trick when setting bow holds up. This is one of my violas with her bow, fish, and frog. And right here, I know that Things for Strings has the cello fent, but I have found that it's difficult for my kids to necessarily get their hand over that elephant that's on there. However, and that's particularly true with kids with small hands, but I have found that the bow frog, if you'll just use the bow frog on the cello, this helps kids with weaker muscles in their right hand keep from that collapsing backwards bow hold, which we all hate. But I found, particularly with my kids that are on the autism spectrum, this is a big problem. They just lack the fine motor skills to be able to keep that hand the correct direction. This bow frog is awesome for that. And then the multi-mouse, here you see it being used as a bow guide. You could put it on either side to keep the bow on the correct path. And here it's being used as a wrist reminder. And then there are tons of free teaching apps that are available. My favorites I've highlighted in blue here. I love the Rhythm Trainer. I like AuralWiz, and I like UCLA Music Theory. Guys, if you're teaching AP High School Theory and you're not using UCLA Music Theory, you're missing out. And AuralWiz is great if you're teaching that too for oral skills. But I would encourage you to jump on and have your kids explore the DJ Mixer Studio or WavePad. Those are wonderful, and they are so great for getting kids to be creative in music. There are so many wonderful things that we have out there. And, you know, thanks to COVID and being locked up, we're doing more discovery with these things. But I think it would be great for us to encourage that same discovery in our students. Give them some of these apps and let them take a little more ownership in their own music learning. All right, as I said at the very end of this, or earlier on, I said I've got a handout that has so many links on there. Every single one of the bow tools and teaching tools that you saw is linked on that handout. Some of the games have specified directions for them. However, if you get through your handout and you're looking at this later on and you're like, now wait a minute, I can't remember what she said. My email address is both on the handout and it's on the screen right now. Please feel free to contact me at any time. I am happy to help out. I'm happy to even come in and demonstrate how to do some of these things with your kiddos if you would like me to. That is when they're allowing people back in buildings again. So anyway, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your semester, that you have as much fun as you possibly can with your kids, and that we all get through this COVID mess as quickly as possible. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.